At that time, the government was having trouble getting young men to enlist. It was no longer just hippies complaining. Even the veterans from other wars wanted answers. It was getting really difficult for our government to sell this crazy war to the masses, especially being we're supposedly the strongest nation on the planet. Yet every night on TV, we saw a bunch of third world bush people kicking our butts. So some asshole in Washington came up with the brilliant idea for a lottery. I guess they figured everybody likes to gamble, it's the American way. The master plan was to randomly pick capsules that had birth dates in them out of a giant container. If your birth date was among the first 100 drawn, you were a goner. With the next 100 selected, you had a 50-50 chance. The rest would skate. Of course, conspiracy theories were coming out of the woodwork. I especially loved the one I heard this radical hippie dude on TV come up with. He said that the government knew the exact number of males born on each date. Supposedly, they would make the capsules with those higher number of births in them weight less. That would bring them to the top when they put them in the container. His theory was scary, but then again, smoking too much pot made you paranoid. Well, you know what happens when everything is going smoothly. Someone always turns on the fan. This time it's Uncle Sam with the hottest game in town. Broadcasting live at 8 p.m. for the first time ever on national TV. Win a free trip to Vietnam. I have seen some major events on TV from the first time Elvis appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Shit, they were scary times. I can remember those air raid drills in school, where we would duck under our desk praying to God that there wouldn't be a nuclear war. Then there was the assassination of John F. Kennedy, followed by Jack Ruby shooting Lee Harvey Oswald. Then Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King getting it. But none of those events would have an impact on my life as much as this one. For me, this was the show of shows. A lot of my friends were trying to figure out a way to beat the draft. If they weren't in college, they tried enlisting in the reserves, but many others did too, so that didn't last long. Many started seeing a shrink. Having a drug addiction was very popular at that time. That's when the rehab business started to flourish. There I was stuck in the middle once again. Many of my Gentile friends who weren't all fucked up on drugs they were enlisting, while my Jewish friends were finding ways to beat the draft. There I was with no high school diploma, finally on track, learning a new career. I'm making good money while trying my best to escape from my colorless world. And so far, my luck hadn't been that bad. So I took my chances with the lottery, and that night had finally arrived. In my neighborhood, people were having lottery parties. Bring your own beer, pretzels, and don't forget your nuts. I stayed home and got really religious that day. I know it sounds hard to believe, and if I hadn't seen it for myself, I wouldn't have believed it either. There it was on the TV, a big container filled with capsules. I was playing in a nationwide game, and for many of the losers it was a death sentence, and they wondered why our generation did drugs. This bulldog-looking guy with a crew-cut hairdo and a dark suit slowly reached into the container when it stopped spinning and took out the first capsule. He opens it and takes out a small note with July 26th on it. He hands it to another guy and he puts it on the board. He takes out the next capsule and so on. I never did any gambling or any kind of risk-taking back then, but I did know the feeling of the unknown. This was no different to me from the nights I waited for the old man to come home with a load on, or those times when I was lured into a fight and how the fear I felt in the beginning would turn to anger, followed by a rush of adrenaline flowing through my body, and suddenly I was invincible. That's pretty much how I felt not being picked by the 38th capsule. I was still alive. However, my hopes were soon shattered. On the 39th pick, they nailed me. I couldn't believe it. 2 years in the military would put me in a hole one way or another. It had nothing to do with Vietnam. I just couldn't afford to lose that kind of time.